Hey guys, welcome to another video tutorial. This is Niels and today we'll be learning how to draw. Yay! So I know what you think. Niels, I cannot draw. But the fact is you can. Drawing is a skill. So if you learn the techniques and the skills and the steps that we are going to do today, you'll be able to draw a little bit better, and we're gonna start with the basics and we're gonna work ourselves up to something like this. We are going to focus on drawing in perspective today. Okay, so what are we waiting for? Let's go. Okay, so before we can actually start, there's a few terms and terminology that we need to know when we are going to work in the lesson. So I need you to understand the following words that I'm going to use. Okay, so we're going to start with the basics and we're going to work ourselves up. So if a line looks like this, it will be horizontal, and if the line looks like this is vertical. Right, so this is just the basics that we're just quickly recapping. Right, with horizontal line, we also get the word horizon. So the horizon line is actually the line that you see when you look across the ocean, and it's exactly that point where the sun sets and you can see nothing past that. That is what we call the horizon line, and that is basically the farthest point that our human eye can basically see. We'll be working with that as well today. Perpendicular and parallel lines. So perpendicular lines are lines that are connected. These lines do cross each other with a 90-degree corner in between them. And then what we're going to look at is parallel lines. Parallel lines are lines like this. If they go on forever, they will basically never touch. Okay, so these lines are 100% parallel. They will never touch at any point. So they are going in exactly the same direction. And then last but not least, we are going to look at vanishing points. So a vanishing point is the point at what something that is decreasing disappears. Right, let's get on with it. So what we're basically doing today is we are drawing blocks. So we're going to do some maths now. There's science in maths and maths in science, and art in maths and science in art, and basically everything is connected. Right, so we're going to look at this block. If you look at this block, it has length, breadth, and then it also has depth. Right, so if we were to actually draw this on a graph like we were doing in last term's lessons, we're going to look at, it has an x-axis, which is the bottom line, and then we have a y-axis that is the vertical line, right? But then this graph actually also has a z or z-axis, right? And this is where we're going to get the depth measurement, right? So you'll have your x-axis, which is the breadth, your y-axis, that is the length, and then the depth of the z or the z-axis, right? So how does this come in handy? Let's jump into the drawing board or a piece of paper. I want you to grab your very expensive tools, which is a pencil and a ruler, right? If you don't have a ruler, you can always use a ruler. So please make sure that you use this. This is a very handy tool, and this will actually make our drawings accurate.
Okay guys, what we're going to do now is I'm going to change the microphone settings so you can hear my voice and the bass inside my voice very nicely. Okay, so we have to start with the basics, right? So we are literally going to start with a dot. Okay, so if you think of how many dimensions we actually see in a dot, it will be 0 dimensions. If we add some dimensions, so we're going to add breadth, length to this will be 1 dimension. Okay, so if this was a car or something, we won't be able to see it. But now let's add another dimension so we can actually have form, and this will then be 2-dimensional, right? So here we actually have our x-axis and our y-axis. Okay, so to actually make something look 3D, we're going to add another dimension, and this will be the depth of the object, right? 3-dimensional does not necessarily mean that this is drawn in perspective. Drawing something in 3D and drawing it in perspective is two different things, and we're going to get there in a few moments, right? So we want to start with something very easy. So before we can actually draw something in perspective, everyone needs to know how to draw a cube. So this is how we're going to start. So the first line is going to be 100% vertical. The second line is going to be 100% horizontal, right? So this will basically look like a graph, like we do in maths. So we want to look at the y-axis and the x-axis, and that is 100% vertical and horizontal. Okay, so now we're gonna just close the cube. So these lines are going to be parallel with each other. So at opposite sides are obviously going to be parallel, right? So now this is going to be our z-axis, our z-axis, whatever you want to call it, and this is going to add depth. So this is a 45-degree angle, and this is basically just going to create the side of the object or the cube that we're actually building. Okay, so what I want you to recognize is that these three lines actually needs to be parallel to each other. So they have to face the same direction. If these lines carry on forever, they're not supposed to touch each other. And this is a 3D cube. So we want to look at the x and the y and the z axis. This is not drawn in perspective. These three lines are parallel, and then these three lines are parallel. So you can see with the colors, these lines should never touch each other. And this is not drawn in perspective, this is just drawn in 3D. 3 dimensions. Okay, so let's start by actually drawing something in perspective. So we want to start with the horizontal or the horizon line. Sorry, my bad. Horizon line. I know line is supposed to be spelled with an E at the end. I have no clue why I did it like that. Okay. And then we're going to choose our vanishing point, and this will basically be the sun on the right side. That's our vanishing point right there. Okay, so everything that we now draw, we want everything that we now draw leading to that specific point. So let's say we are going to draw train tracks, right? So we want to start with 2 dots on the bottom, and that's basically going to be the first piece of wood or the first piece of line. And once again, this is 100% horizontal, so this is going to be our x-axis basically, and then every line that is connected to a point needs to lead to the vanishing point, right? So these lines that we're actually drawing, these are actually now our z or z axis, right? Okay, but we'll get into the specifics of that later on. We're going to start drawing another train tracks again, but this time we're actually going to draw an object or a cube. So instead of just drawing the lines in between, we're just going to start drawing a cube. Remember, these lines that we're drawing right now is 100% horizontal and 100% vertical, right? And the only lines that are not 100% parallel are actually not going to be the x-axis. So you can see there it's 100% horizontal, and then y-axis is 100% vertical. Okay, so also just a quick pause here. If I write down W, vertical in Afrikaans is vertical, and you spell that with a W. So I'm speaking English and thinking Afrikaans at the same time, right? Okay, so there you can see we on the right side, we are basically going to connect the lines to each other, and then look at this line. So if I want to create the back side, or the end of the backside of the shape, this line is 100% vertical. So look at this, is actually still a y-axis. That line does not lead anywhere, but completely straight up or straight down, right? Okay, so that little part that I drew there is a line segment that is part of the same line. So if I draw a leading line like that, then part of that line is going to be part of the shape that I'm actually drawing. And I want this next line to also be parallel with the top part there. Okay, so it's not leading anywhere, it's just 100% horizontal again. Okay, and that is the line segment I spoke about a few seconds ago. Okay, so now you can see that this cube is actually drawn in perspective, and you can actually see that those lines are actually going farther away and actually getting smaller as they go farther away. We actually see this in various circumstances in today's life, and I'm going to prove this to you now. We don't even realize this, but we see it in our everyday life. So if I were to draw a room, here you will see that I will have a vanishing point in the middle, and then basically have blocks all around it, and then every single corner line leads to that middle line. So even if it's from the top, as you can see, the roof or the bottom or on the floor or the sides, everything leads to this one specific point. Right, and if I were actually to draw this realistically, even the tiles and everything will actually lead to that specific point. Okay, I hope you can see this if I draw it like this. Right, so all of these lines actually lead to 1 point. So that's 1 point perspective. Now let's go to 2 point perspective. Instead of having one vanishing point, we're now going to have 2 vanishing points. So you're going to choose one on the left side, one on the right side. And we want to start with just like making a few draft lines for us. So this is going to be the side line, the bottom side line, and that is going to be, so basically like the train tracks we're doing, but this is now we're just going to start with the right side of the box shape. So the line in the middle, we want this also to be the y-axis, and once again this is 100% vertical, or vertical in Afrikaans if you want to say it like that. Next line is also 100% vertical, parallel with the first line that we drew. Right, okay, now usually what we were to do is what we did in the previous example is we just drew a box, and that first line there that I'm crossing out there, that's going to be our x-axis. We don't want that x-axis to be 100% horizontal anymore. We want this to actually go to the specific vanishing point. So we're going to connect the corners and we're going to lead those lines to the vanishing point. So that is actually now my x-axis, and that is not horizontal anymore. Right, I hope that makes sense. And then this is once again our y-axis. This is once again 100% vertical. And we are in the next step actually going to change this up. But for now, I hope you can see that's the right side of the shape. So this is the side, and that is my other side. So we have our z-axis on the right side and our x-axis on the left side. So now we're changing it up a little bit. So now these corners once again needs to lead somewhere. So that is our z-axis, it creates depth, and that is once again our x-axis, which is part of the first x shape that we drew. And now we can really see that this thing is becoming way more in perspective. So now we're actually looking at this in 2 point perspective. So that's 100% vertical. The pink lines, the orange lines all lead to, that's basically the z-axis, all leads to that vanishing point, and the x-axis lines all lead to that vanishing point right there. Okay, so we only have one set of lines that is 100% straight and will never touch it. That is the x-axis, so that is the top part, and let's go on to the next section. Okay, so this section is for the overachievers. Right, so you always get those people like myself, I always want to overdo everything. So now we're not going to have 2 points of perspective, and here is where it gets a little bit difficult, right? So you're going to have 3 vanishing points. So you'll have your vanishing point 1, vanishing point 2, and this is basically going to look like if we are viewing a building from, let's say, a helicopter or something. So that we actually have another vanishing point on the bottom of the page there, since we are basically viewing something from the sky right now and we're not standing on the ground anymore. So what I want you to do is I want you to start drawing just a straight line up. So this is going to be once again one of the corners of the block or the cube that we're drawing, and this is going to be our y-axis, right? So we want to let all of the other lines actually lead to the vanishing point 1 and the vanishing point 2. Okay, so what we want to do now is we want to actually, this is the middle part of the shape. So what we need to do next is we actually, so that's going to be the bottom point and the top point of the block that we're going to draw. And this line that I'm going to draw now is the x-axis. Remember we spoke about the x-axis that we changed in the previous video. That's going to be the bottom part of the shape, and this is the top part of the shape that we're drawing. Right. Okay, so now we want to do the same thing on the right side. So we're going to connect the dots, basically the vanishing point the bottom point to the vanishing point and the top corner to the vanishing point, right? So basically this looks exactly the same as our 2-point perspective or 2-point perspective. But what we're going to do now is we want to create the end of the shape. So usually we were going to draw this line 100% vertical like you see there. But what we want to do is we want to change this up to let this line actually go to the third vanishing point. Not there, but there. Right, so instead of taking this line, the y-axis that was 100% vertical, we now want to make it go to a specific vanishing point, the bottom one. So we're going to draw this rough draft, and then we're just going to use that middle segment of the line that is actually part of the shape. We're going to do the same on the right side of the page. That is the top corner. So you can see I'm just guessing wherever I want that corner to go. Not 100% vertical down, but this point needs to lead to the vanishing point as well. Okay, so that there we have our 3 top points or corners, and that is our y-axis. And that is also our y-axis, but you can see it's not straight 100% vertical anymore. It actually leads to the vanishing point on the bottom. Right, that is our x-axis. That is also part of our x-axis, which was 100% horizontal, and those are actually our z or z-axis, which actually creates the depth. Okay, so now we want our x-axis to that corner to lead to the vanishing point 1 on the top there to create the back side of the shape, and this point needs to lead to vanishing point 2. So now we can see the top part of our shape is actually starting to form, and basically we already have our shape now. So that's the top and back point right there. Okay, so let's quickly connect the lines which actually goes where. So in orange it will be our z-axis, which leads, all of these lines leads to the vanishing point 2. So that is not 100% horizontal anymore. And then we have our x-axis. These lines all lead to vanishing point 1. These lines are also not parallel to each other. They all lead to vanishing point 1. If they carry on forever, they will meet up at vanishing point 1. And then we're going to look at the y-axis. The y-axis lines all lead to vanishing point 3 on the bottom. And there you have your block, your building, whatever you want to do with it. In 3-point perspective. So you can do quite amazing things with this, and I'll show you a few examples if you use this effectively and actually use what you've learned in actual artworks. Awesome guys, I really hope that you enjoyed this. Please let me know what you think. If you follow these steps that I've shown you now, you are actually capable of creating amazing pieces of artwork. You can write your name in this, and so on and so on. So please play around with this. The exercise file will be on the website underneath this video. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can just click on the link on the bottom and it will take you right to that website. Awesome guys, thank you for watching this. I'll see you in the next video.